You're listening to the Really Useful Podcast. This is the tech podcast for technophobes like you from makeuseof.com. My name is Christian Cawley, and joining me this week is Gavin Phillips. How are you doing, Gavin?
I'm doing very well, Christian. Yeah, very well indeed. How about yourself, mate?
Yeah, not bad. Tinkering with a laptop SSD drive first thing in the morning is good for anyone's soul, I think.
Absolutely. Gets you up to speed for the week, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Focuses the mind when you realise, if I don't do this, I'm not earning any money. So we have got a collection of news, tips and tricks and recommendations for you this week. Our news is of the stuff that you need to know about, rather than who's the latest CEO of Microsoft, CEO even of Microsoft. Oh, that speaks so many volumes. What that little Freudian slip there. Tech news that matters, tips and tricks to help you make better use of your technology, and then it gets better because then we tell you something. Oh, it's subjective because it could get worse. When Gavin and I discuss something that we've recently experienced technologically wise and recommend it. Or I suppose we might do the opposite of recommending. That has happened before and it may happen again. But before that, TikTok has denied claims that it suffered a massive data breach. Now, this is a very interesting story because there was speculation that it had. Someone went on the interwebs and claimed that they had, but it turns out that it didn't actually happen.
It's wild, actually, really, isn't it? Because the person in question, who that had a username of Against the West on a well-known hacking forum, basically, where people hack and they go and dump the files or the information they've hacked, and they attempt to either give them or sell them to other people, and they popped up and said, hello, I have amassed 790 gigabytes.
You're thinking of phishing there.
of user information, which amounted to over 2 billion individual records. So, of course, when this information went live, it was headline grabbing news. Except for the fact that quite quickly TikTok came back and said, we've got nothing to do with this, and we're going to completely deny it, which is very interesting.
It is. It is a crazy one. Now, the person responsible has been banned from the forum where they posted it. And I mean, they accused the same a hack of WeChat, which is a Chinese social media chatting service as well. It is a strange story. I think it also, there's a boy who cried wolf aspect to this as well. It's concerning that someone should be able to make a claim such as that with apparent screenshots. It's difficult to say whether they were presented out of context or not. TikTok have told Forbes that TikTok prioritizes the privacy and security of our users' data. Our security team investigated these claims and found no evidence of a security breach. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. It's a good response. However, we are talking about TikTok, which is a kind of playground for social engineers with a black hat, isn't it, really? So if all that data was hacked, an awful lot of it could be claimed in other ways anyway, couldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And as you sort of alluded to there, the owner of TikTok, a company called ByteDance, who the listener may or may not be aware of how often their name has come up in terms of other security issues and privacy issues, all stemming from TikTok and the amount of data they collect on their users, how they use it, and because ByteDance are a Chinese firm, there's other considerations to their links to the Chinese government, which is why the company has been talked about in all sorts of different US hearings regarding those concerns.
Yeah, yeah. So it's difficult to. In many other cases, would say take this with a pinch of salt, and it seems that this leak did not happen, but you need to be aware that TikTok is not the place to upload anything or even to use if you value your privacy and security, basically. We'll move on. Apple has launched the iPhone 14, and Google reminds everyone that the Pixel 7 is coming soon. It will launch on October the 6th, and unlike the iPhone 14, features an all-new chip, which is called... I forgot what it's called.
It's the Google Tensor 2.
G2, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting because we've obviously just had the Apple iPhone 14 launch. And they revealed at the Apple launch that they're going to use the same chip as the previous generation of iPhone. And now, while it's not a huge issue. It's something that if you go on the tech websites, people will say, "Oh, this is a crying shame," and we want upgrades with every generation. But it just doesn't work like that. And in all fairness, most people aren't really going to see a huge difference from chip to chip. However, that said, the Google Tensor G2 chip does look like it can bring on like a bit of a leap and bound for the Google Pixel line. It's more powerful, way better on energy consumption, and those sort of two things combined are really what you want in a smartphone, aren't they?
Definitely. You don't have to be recharging it all the time. I mean, the Oppo Reno 8 5G, which I reviewed on Make Use a few months ago, I typically recharge it every other day. And it's a super phone with a beautiful camera. So, I mean, that's where we need to be getting to the point where we're not recharging phones every night, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think it feels like pretty par for the course, though, doesn't it? Like, I have a OnePlus Nord, which is now a few years old, and that it'd go all day, but it needs charging every night. And then I also had the Nothing Phone 1, which I haven't used as much as I should have, but that goes for around 48 hours with minimal use, which is good. So
yeah, it's nice when you don't have to do that. You don't have to do the plugging in thing. I mean, you might be flash and have a contactless charging setup where you can just put your phone down, but I find they don't tend to work as well as they claim to. But, so the Pixel 6 was Google's best-selling phone ever, and it's hoping that the Pixel 7 and 7 Pro can build upon that success. Also spotted at Google's Code Conference was Sundar Pichai wearing the Pixel Watch, which I didn't realize was going to be real. I thought it was just a prototype thing, but it's really going to happen. And it's powered by Wear OS and is built around things like Google Assistant and Fitbit for health and fitness tracking. And we don't know when that's going to come along, though. I was just digging through my drawers the other day and I found my old smartwatch. I haven't bought a smartwatch since I had a Sony Smartwatch 2. And I was disappointed with it, although it looked awesome and it felt like a watch, which was the first watch I'd had in years. It missed key things. It was that type of smartwatch that mirrored the phone that it was synced with, rather than being sort of autonomous as you can expect a smartwatch to be. So, for instance, it didn't have a step counter in it. It was relying on my phone, which has certain drawbacks, such as what if you leave your phone behind?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you using a smartwatch?
No, similarly, actually, as we were just talking about with battery life and daily charging, the one smartwatch that I did have, it was a Fossil watch of certain generation from 2019, but the battery on it was not nearly good enough to last. I think maybe it got 48 hours tops, and that was with minimal use of the various gadgets and widgets that you would actually want to use your smartwatch for. So I've not really used one. I think things like the Apple Watch, though, do have much better overall battery life.
Yeah.
So it would be really interesting to see what Google can do with the Pixel Watch, because I mean, even more so than a mobile phone, I guess, like battery life on a smartwatch is It's imperative, otherwise it's just a piece of metal strapped to your wrist that doesn't even show the time. So
it's a bracelet.
Yeah, it's a bracelet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very expensive one as well.
Yeah. Okay. A new version of Raspberry Pi OS has arrived. Now, this happens every year or so, sometimes more often than that, and it typically brings a few small tweaks and other feature enhancements. But the big sort of issue with the Raspberry Pi, or the big news with the Raspberry Pi and Raspberry Pi OS, isn't so much the OS or the enhancements to the operating system. It's the fact that it's really difficult to get hold of a Raspberry Pi at the moment.
It's still it's ongoing from sort of the COVID-19 setbacks around the world, isn't it? So it's sort of as the world was forced into being at home more and more people will buy Raspberry Pis, and then the pressures upon the entire network chain, the supply chain, it just hasn't really recovered, has it?
It's a strange one. No, it hasn't. And I think various demands on the Raspberry Pi have probably, beg your pardon, specific models of Raspberry Pi probably have exacerbated this slightly as well. For instance, it's possible with some models of Raspberry Pi and Raspberry Pi compute modules, they can be used to run with Amiga computers as accelerators. There's various other things. The Raspberry Pi, standard Raspberry Pis, and again, compute modules are excellent for prototyping Internet of Things projects.
Yeah.
You've also got the whole work from home thing that was promoted during the COVID years, as we may call them, and Raspberry Pis, or the Raspberry Pi 4 in particular, the 4GB and 8GB models, they will make desktop replacements. They'll also they can also run as thin clients as well.
Yeah.
So you've got these whole new demands for the Raspberry Pi that weren't there before. That's keeping it popular. It's also because of the supply chain issues pushing the price up.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to hear some prices of recently sold Raspberry Pi 4s on eBay, as I have them on my screen?
Go on then.
So a Raspberry Pi Model 4 4GB RAM recently sold on the 12th of September, which is today, in fact, as we are recording, for £100.
Now that one, that must have been £40 when it was released.
I think 40 or 50 quid.
Yeah.
So I'll do an 8GB one as well. So UK Raspberry Pi 4 Model B 8GB, £125 sold today, and those ones
that's double the price.
Yeah, I think they're 60, 75 quid, aren't they? There's another one that sold for 135, 130, 140. So they are going second hand.
Yeah.
Although I think most of those were brand new, to be fair. So there's people that have bought them, maybe forgotten about them. I mean, the cynic in me says it's people being awful and buying them to resell for twice the price, because that is what happens. But
well, they might be like me and just have too many Raspberry Pis.
yeah, it's true. It does happen.
It does happen. What I would say is that you can get them cheaper. We have a guide on Make Use Of, which I'll include in the show notes, along with everything else that we discuss in this week's show, that will show you where you can get Raspberry Pis for sensible prices, or certainly more sensible than eBay.
Yeah, and if you do want to get one, because they really are good fun. I haven't got one of the latest models, but I've got several of the previous generation, and we use them for all sorts of things, and they can be really quickly reconfigured into something else as well. So if you can get one, maybe do.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone should have one. At least one.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to share. Okay, we'll move on. Yeah, so as I mentioned, everything we've discussed in the news you'll find in the show notes, and the same goes for the next section. It's tips and tricks time, where we bring you tips and tricks to help you make better use of the gear that you're using, whether that be PC, the television in your living room, your games console, your mobile device, whatever. We're going to kick off with this: how to check the health of your Windows 10, 11 PC or laptop. There are various tools built into Windows that you can use for this. I no longer use Windows, so I feel as though I may have to hand this over to Gavin to go through. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So the interesting thing is the PC Health Check app released by Microsoft. It's not actually that much about PC health, is it? The PC Health Check, despite its name, is actually to see if your system was ready to upgrade to Windows 11. That was the largest part of it. Now, the app itself gives you an overview of what's going on your computer. It will show you your last Windows update time, your storage capacity, any other quirks going on with your system. But in terms of getting down into the nuts and bolts of actual system health, like how healthy is your hard drive, for instance, or your solid state drive, it doesn't necessarily deliver much in that area. There are other things as well that you should also check when it comes to PC health. And of course, the big one is security. We're constantly bombarded with security threats. We've already talked about a potential data breach in this show. And, it comes from all areas these days. And the Windows Security PC Health Check is actually one that is worth doing. So on your Windows machine, in the bottom corner, you can use the little up arrow, you click that, and you will see the Shield logo, which is the Windows Security logo. And clicking on that opens up the Windows Security portal, where once open, you can see your device performance and health. And what you're looking for here is the health report, and that again shows you your storage capacity, apps and software, and other things. But it also shows you those things in relation to security, if there are any underlying security issues on your machine. If there are, you can click them, run through the results or the troubleshooter on your screen, and it should help you resolve any issues that you have. Now, the final one to talk about is the Windows Performance Monitor, which I don't really use this one very much, but it does have quite a decent range of information inside it. You'll be able to find things on system diagnostics, system performance. It shows you sort of reports from your computer where there's been errors, faults, and what have you. So if you are experiencing a specific error, or you encounter, the dreaded blue screen of death when Microsoft or Windows crashes, and you end up on the big blue screen, you will often end up in the performance monitor trying to find a system report about what's happened. And in that, it can be a really, really useful tool for getting more into the nuts and bolts of your computer when you encounter specific issues of that nature. So overall, Microsoft does have quite a lot of different tools at its hand. There's also one that you can do to check your battery health that does a sleep study. There is another option to check your wireless network health with a network report, and that's actually another tool I've not really used. But once you run it, it shows you, the overall health of your wireless network, which includes the reason why your system keeps disconnecting. Which, if you are having a Wi-Fi problem where you just can't connect to the Wi-Fi, that can be a really, really useful tool. So if you don't use Windows very much at all, Christian, so you don't run into any of these really annoying Windows errors anymore.
No, I don't. No, I've encountered a few errors of my own this morning, as we were discussing before the podcast. Before we started recording, there's a little thing that I ran into when I've tried to clone a disk, and I've run into a grub thing on Linux, which is because it can't find the grub bootloader. But I'm pretty sure there's a way around that. It's going to be a bit of a tricky, slightly messy taking things apart. Actually, the laptop I'm recording this on, I actually haven't screwed it back together. The screws are on the table in front of me still, because I'm expecting to take it apart again. And while I had it in pieces, there's nothing to do with that at all. It's slightly, I suppose, because it's an HP Envy. It was bought with Windows 10 on it. It's just got a beautiful 17-inch display. It also has a Bang & Olufsen logo on it, although, to be honest with you, you wouldn't know it had Bang & Olufsen speakers in it. But And this is the interesting thing. When I opened it up, I discovered that it has a slot for an M2 drive.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Super fast.
Totally. And it got me thinking. So I headed to the cupboard behind me, dug out my spare M2 drive, and guess what? Wrong key. So not able to use that because it's an incompatible component. Now, if I'd known that beforehand, I wouldn't have spent money on a 1 terabyte SSD. I'd have spent money on a 1 terabyte M2 module. But I don't know what I'm going to do. Whether I'm going to continue with the cloning or not, we'll see. We'll move on. I've mentioned a couple of times recently that I've been looking at a Dashcam, and the review of that is ready to get published shortly. Hopefully this week. You never know. I'm not entirely enamored with the device. A spoiler, hashtag. But dashcams are important. And, it may be the case that by the time you hear this podcast, the dashcam review has been published and you'll find out exactly what I don't like about it. But there are reasons to have a dashcam that I want to go into. I want to list them for you. Okay, so number one, you will have first-hand evidence of an accident if you're using a dashcam. And that can be really useful, not least in providing evidence to prosecute dangerous drivers. Number two, they help to manage reckless drivers as well, because if they spot a dashcam in your car, they're going to ease off the driving. If they're borrowing your car and they see there's a dashcam, they're going to drive better. A dashcam can also help you evade wrongfully issued tickets, or these are speeding tickets that you will collect from driving at the wrong speed in places. They won't stop you getting parking tickets for not knowing how to use a parking disc properly. That's a very UK problem, and I probably said too much there. I'll move on. It can help thwart car break-ins and vandalism because it's going to record what's happening. Now, it might be that the dashcam gets stolen, but some, not all, but some will stream to, will sync with a cloud account. You can replay road trips on a dashcam. It depends how good the dashcam is and whether it's got GPS or not. That also helps for you to be able to match it up with where you are exactly. Some third-party dashcam apps will run the video and the GPS data, and they will show you in Google Maps where you are as you watch the video alongside it, which is a pretty cool way of reviewing your journey. A dashcam can help make you a better driver as well. You know the dashcam is there. You can check the footage, or you can just be more attentive as you're driving. Dashcams also come with extra features such as lane detection as well, I've recently discovered. You can use a dashcam to capture unexpected events, whether car accidents, meteorites hitting, that was a big one a few years ago, crashing through the atmosphere, all sorts of natural events and things like that, plane crashes, or anything, basically, that happens in front of, or if you've got a rear camera as well, behind the car. And dashcams can also be a solution for parents concerned about their children's driving. Should you be brave enough to let your children drive at all? Never mind the family car. So did you use a dashcam, Gavin?
I have been using on and off a converted smartphone, actually, using an Android app. I haven't got a dedicated dashcam, but I have previously written for Make Use of, actually, about some of the best Android apps you can install on an Android device to convert it into a smartphone, into a dashcam, sorry. And it works reasonably well. The only thing I would say that really distinguishes an actual dashcam versus a smartphone is probably nighttime shooting. So during the daytime, the smartphone is absolutely fine. At nighttime, it does struggle somewhat to capture sort of the finer detail and stuff like that. It's a relatively old smartphone as well, so it's got a decent camera, but it's not the best. So you definitely lose some quality. But if you've got a more modern smartphone, I mean, you could definitely use it to capture all the stuff that's going on in your car, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. I do find, I mean, this dashcam that I've been talking about is a good example of this. It has a rear camera, so, for the purposes of the review, I installed the rear camera. But the mileage varies hugely on rear cameras for dashcam setups because, in a small hatchback, it might be considered easier, but then again, I'm not convinced it would be easier. I have an MPV. It's it's a long 10-foot long car or so, and and it's the latest model of a car that I've had previously. The previous car, it was relatively straightforward to install the dash cam in the boot. This time round, it's basically had to follow the car's lighting cabling through the bodywork of the car, through a tube.
Wow.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of panel removing and shoveling stuff around and unplugging spongy cable protectors and stuff and threading it through that way. And of course, because I don't like it, I'm going to have to undo all of that.
Oh no. Yeah. The thing is, as well, you have to get in there to find out exactly how it works.
Yep.
Yeah. Now you've got to do it all in reverse.
We move to that point of the show where we offer you a recommendation. This is based upon something that we've seen or enjoyed or bought or maybe even sometimes hated, with the recommendation being avoid. Who's going to go first this week, Gavin?
I can go first if you like, Christian.
Go on then.
I'm ready to go, mate.
Go for it.
I'm all ready. So this week, I would like to recommend F1 Manager 2022, the new video game launched by Frontier Developments. Frontier Developments are also known for Planet Zoo, Jurassic World Evolution, Planet Coaster, and quite a few other games as well. But the F1 Manager 2022 is their latest game. It's fully licensed by F1, so if you're into motor racing, then it's really good for that. It's got all the names of the drivers, teams. It's got cool little snippets of radio chatter as well. When you change settings and stuff, the driver comes on over the radio and says, confirmed, or yeah, all right, that sort of thing. And the graphics themselves are really, really good for a game that's all about management. There's loads of different onboard camera shots. The racing is pretty good. There's definitely some tweaks needed to things like when a safety car comes out, or if they're overtaking a back marker, things like that. So there's some things that do still need tweaking in the game, but overall I've been really impressed with it so far. There's good depth as well to the amount of development you can do to the car, so you can put money into different areas to build better or faster components to the car, and you have a budget for the season and that sort of thing. The only thing I really would like to see, which isn't available in a minute, is a create your own team scenario. So at the moment you take over one of the existing 10 teams and you take those on. Adding your own team to the grid and building it up from scratch, I think, is probably what most people would want a game like this for. And there's another game on the market that came out years ago now called Motorsport Manager, which allows you to do that, which is not as graphically as intensive, but it's very good fun. But so if you're into your Formula 1 or motor racing of any type and you like a management game, I think F1 Manager 2022 is a really good shout.
I have questions.
Yep.
Number one, do you drive?
No. So it is in the same vein as Football Manager, Championship Manager. You are managing the team, the budget, finance, all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the racing, you can give instructions for them to, say, deploy more battery boost or push harder, change your tyre strategy, that sort of stuff. But no, there's no actual physical driving. Okay,
and do you have to sit through 60 laps?
You can do.
Whoa!
You can do percentages of races. You don't have to do the full whack.
Right.
But I think for the best experience, it is best to do a full race. But you can put it up to 4 or 8 times speed, I think. In fact, I think there's a 16 times speed. You can go into a map overview. Instead of being directly with a car, you can look at an overview of the whole circuit. And if I recall rightly, you can go up to 16 times speed on that map. So it whizzes around jolly fast.
Okay. Excellent. I feel like I should check that out. I don't know if I will or not. I'm torn. I'm torn. My recommendation is something. I feel like I should have mentioned this already. I'm not sure if I have, and if I have, I apologise. But House of the Dragon
No,
is
I don't think you've said that yet.
no. I wasn't sure. I may mention it with Ben, but I just can't remember. I don't. And if I did, I don't feel like I gave it enough of a boost, enough of a big up. It is really, really good, in a way that the last series of Game of Thrones was not. So you've got a completely fresh cast. You've got a not completely fresh story, because it's in the same world, and it's set about 200 years before Game of Thrones events. It is really very good. I'm been astonished at exactly how good it is, and the characters in there. And you have some great British talent in there, like Matt Smith and Rhys Ifans. You've got Paddy Considine. You have Millie Alcock, who basically plays she's more or less the lead character. She's certainly the focus character, which is odd because she's actually getting replaced along with another young actress as this series moves. It does a thing, whereas Game of Thrones was very serialized, this is more chapter, so it jumps forward in time each episode. So like something like The Crown, for instance, although I think that did do that, and then it changed cast and series, which obviously also featured Matt Smith. So there are going to be older versions of some of the younger characters in this show later on. But it is a really good show. And Matt Smith, who's you don't see him very often, he's a former Doctor Who actor as well as being Prince Philip in this season of The Crown. He's really, really very good. He's the other podcast I do, we discussed this a few weeks ago, in the fact that Matt Smith has got a very good television career, but every time he goes into movies, it turns out to be a bit of a flop, or something doesn't sit right with it, whether it be him being completely cut from the last Star Wars movie, or the insult to intelligence that was the last Terminator movie, or even the Mobius movie that came out this year. They just don't seem to hit. But when he does a TV show, they're just fantastic, and he's really good in House of the Dragon. So there's a few characters. Rhys Ifans is in there as well, as a key character. There's a few of them that hold the show together, but it's really worth checking out. And I think I don't want to say that it's kind of, it doesn't lay the ghost of Game of Thrones' last season to rest. It's. But at the same time, it does give you renewed faith in that whole universe being as interesting as it can be. So if anyone hasn't checked it out yet, I would recommend you watch the first 2 episodes and go from there if you want to, or ditch it. But I've enjoyed it considerably.
Oh, sounds good. They filmed some of that just down the road from my house.
Would it be a nice beach by any chance?
Yeah, what? Would you believe it? All the stuff I've not watched it myself, but they did a load of filming for it on St Michael's Mount in Mounts Bay, where they cordoned it off for several days, and there are all sorts of film crews and whatnot going on. Yeah, just 5 minutes from me.
Is there a big sort of Nolly Hill there on the beach?
Yeah, there's a castle sticking up out the sea,
Right.
and on its own mount basically, and you have to cross a headland that floods twice a day when it gets to high tide. So it's completely cut off from the mainland twice a day.
I know the scenes you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation, and the recommendation links, along with everything else we've discussed in this podcast, you will find in the show notes. That brings us to the end of this week's really useful podcast. I'm Christian Cawley. He's Gavin Phillips. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube, which I always forget about. And all the other places you find podcasts, you will find us there. If you want to get in touch with us, you'll find our Twitter handles in the show notes as well. And I dare say you can get in touch with us via other means, via the Make Use Of website, where our emails are available to all and sundry. Until next time, it's goodbye from us.